Hello, this is Gumshoe Graham, and today we're going to be talking about who killed or why Charles Vallow was murdered on July 11th, 2019. And I'm going to start with he was murdered by someone. Some people are saying that it's Lori Vallow, and then Alex covered for her. Some people say it's was really done by Alex and Summer Shiflett, her sister, because Summer had sent Alex over saying that her sister was in danger. Now think about this. If you thought your brother-in-law was going to murder your sister the next day, would you send your brother over? Or would you call the officials, the police, the law enforcement? Would you call them and say, hey, listen, this guy's out of his mind and he's going to be here tomorrow to kill my sister? And don't you think law enforcement would be there waiting for him, guns drawn? No, that's not what happened. Summer on the 48 Hours clip or news program said that she sent Alex over because she knew that Charles was going to harm her. And she also said on that 48 Hours program that she is so glad that she sent Alex because the outcome would be much different. She was meaning that it would be Lori dead, not Charles. Now, this is called, and I'm not going to swear because we can't swear, but this is called a twist, and it starts with an F. And I don't usually swear, but I'd like to say it. It's a twist F. It is saying that Summer Shiflett said that she sent her brother to defend her sister. Well, I'm appalled at that. I'm appalled that if she really thought her sister was going to be killed, that she would have called authorities and said, a madman's coming. He's coming to attack and kill my sister. Please be there when he arrives. No, friendly, beautiful Alex was there. So I guess you can tell I'm not buying into Summer's account. I'm not buying into Alex's account. I'm not buying if their last name at any times ended with a C, Cox, expressly, I am not buying into what they're trying to make us believe. But where I think we failed Charles Vallow is at a very different place. Remember the video that showed Lori Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Melanie Gibb at the police station? She had gone there because she alleged that Charles had taken it out of her car, her purse, out of her car. Well, during that interview, I believe that they disclosed to her at the police station that they had some type of Arizona warrant or some type of official paperwork to have her evaluated, and that they can't make her go, but if they come upon her, they have to suggest that she goes and that they might have to bring her. So that was very unclear to me, really what was going on there. They had her in their so-called custody because she was in one of their meeting rooms. So I don't understand why, when that meeting ended about her purse, why they didn't automatically drive her right to Community Bridges, which I believe is the mental health facility that was going to do an evaluation on her. I don't get it. Maybe they did. There's bits and pieces always that is left out of the story. So maybe they did transport her right from the police station that day, because Melanie Gibb in her interviews mentioned that Tylee picked them up. And I'm wondering why Tylee had to pick them up, because maybe the police did transport her right to Community Bridges Mental Health, and Tylee came when Community Bridges was done. But anyway, so to get to Community Bridges, so people keep saying, or I keep hearing on different news clips and documents about Lori Vallow that she did have an evaluation that day and that she was cleared for that day. And this is where I beg to differ. She did not have an evaluation that day. In the paperwork that Charles had filed, he asked for her to be held for a 72-hour evaluation. So, of course, I don't know Arizona laws, and I'm not going to get into exactly what their laws are, but this is basically how it usually works in most states. Someone requests that you get evaluated at an outpatient center. So Community Bridges might be an outpatient center. Maybe they're both. Maybe they're an outpatient center and a long-term center. So Lori would have been brought into the outpatient center, and she would have been asked to, come into a private room with another person. And, obviously the person would have the right psychological, medical credentials that they needed to interview her. Because I want to change this from an evaluation to an interview. Because in my opinion, that intake appointment is not an evaluation. That intake appointment is held at hospitals. They'll call people into hospitals, psychologists and whatnot, doctors, to come in and evaluate patients that come in to the emergency room for many different reasons. So this is really not an evaluation again. I might keep saying the same things, but I want to make this clear. If she did pass anything, she only passed an intake. And what happens at an intake? An intake is obviously, they don't know anything about you typically. In this case, she had no psychiatric history with this facility. So they would have just asked her regular things like, where do you live? Do you have adequate housing? Do you have enough food to eat? Are you prescribed medications, and do you have those medications, and are you taking those medications? Do you have a mental health practitioner that you see on a regular basis? Do you have any difficulties at home right now? Do you feel that you're not safe in your home right now? And I'm going to stop myself right there, because that's very important. Do you feel that you're unsafe in your home right now? If she had said, no, I'm not safe in my home, Charles is a threat to me, they would have given her and the children a recommendation to go to a safe house of some type, whether it was run by a domestic violence agency or people that run safe houses throughout her particular community. But no, that did not happen. She did not get a recommendation to a safe house. So that's telling in itself. So the other things that they're likely to ask you is, what's been going on in your life? What's your level of distress? Like, how distressed do you feel? Now, you got to remember that Charles was feeling a lot of distress. And what was his distresses? And I can't go into all the craziness of it, because every time someone says it, I think the general public right now is blocking it out because it sounds so unimaginable that people could get locked into these beliefs. But as we are seeing, they do. So Charles's distress was that his wife purported to him that he was no longer a human being, that he was an actual zombie, that Ned Schneider had taken over his body and was going to harm her in some way. And if Ned Schneider got in her way of her practices of being a member of this 144,000 club that she was in, that, was going to be forthcoming, then she would murder him. She wasn't going to murder Charles Vallow, because Charles Vallow in her mind no longer existed. She was going to murder Ned Schneider. If Ned Schneider, aka Charles Vallow, stopped her, made it hard for her to progress in her gathering of the 144,000 people that she needed for the second coming of Jesus. So with this nonsensical idea, Lori was threatening Charles. And that was written in the paperwork. And you bet your bottom dollar, when Lori Vallow walked into that intake session at Community Bridges, they had reviewed his problems, what he thought was wrong, and why he was scared, and why he was asking the community for help. He was helpless at that time. There's nowhere to turn when a family member, and we'll call them delusions for just a better term, because we can all understand what a delusion is, whether it's auditory or visual or whatever. People have delusions for many different reasons, and Lori certainly was delusional at that time. And what she was doing, she was threatening to kill him if he got in her way of her mission of the 144,000 club that her, Chad, Alex, and Melanie Pulowski, and so many more believed in, and that was their mission. And their simpleton minds, and I'm calling them simpleton minds, because if they had an expanded mind, they could have seen through this, and they could have seen through that this was just a ruse to do harm to other people, whether it was psychologically, emotionally, physically. It was a ruse. This whole, that they were gods and she was a goddess, and all this kind of stuff that was being articulated to the world. But anyway, so in that intake, they check to see if you're orientated. They want to know if you know what the time of day is, what day it is. They want to know what you've been doing. They're checking for, memory, short-term memory, long-term. So they'll ask you questions about your short-term, like what you do yesterday, who brought you here, things like that, to find out if you're in the time and space that they're in. So they do a lot of that. And I've already gone over. They'll ask if you're eating well, that you have access to food and safe shelter and that kind of stuff. And they'll ask you about those delusions because it was in that paperwork. So somehow a crafty practitioner will start slowly asking the person if they do believe in the beliefs. They won't come right out and say, did you say that you're going to kill Charles if he got in the way in any accord of your mission? They won't come out. A good practitioner will usually smooth their way into it, and they'll skirt around the main question and ask smaller questions until they have eased the client enough that they can ask the bigger question. So that's a good practitioner. We don't know who Lori saw that day. I have seen practitioners in my life that are afraid of their own clients, meaning, they might put a guard outside their room when a particular delusional client comes in because they feel at risk. There's a lot of practitioners that have safety issues in their own minds, and they really can't concentrate too much on the client because they're in a heightened response to their own safety. But Lori doesn't present as someone that you feel threatened by. So she's like a snake in the grass. The grass is high, the snake is slithering around, and you don't feel threatened because you don't see it. It's the same with Lori Vallow. The snake is in the grass, but it's there, and it's doing its job. And you have no clue it's there. But what I'm going to tell you, and this is why I wanted to do this video, is one, I can't see any chat if there's a chat. Two, I can't do anything other than talk because I don't have the equipment necessary to engage completely while I do a video. This is what you see is what you get. I just can put the video and talk into a headphone, a head thing. But anyways, what happened was Lori got there. So they asked her all those questions and some more. They asked her about a delusional thinking. And I know that Melanie Gibb and or Tylee, before they went anywhere, told her not to speak of it. The reason I know is Tylee, for instance, was grabbing her mother's arm. Every time in the police interview where her mom seemed off during the police interview, Tylee would grab her mother's arm. That was their message to stop, that you're going to start sounding off. So I believe that they had schooled her. You don't talk about the 144,000 club that you're in to save 144,000 people. You're the only ones that are going to live after the second coming of Jesus. Don't talk about that. Don't talk about zombies. No, child. Don't tell them that Charles is Ned Schneider. Don't go into any of that. I can hear it clear as a bell that they're going on and on and on, schooling her in the very nicest way that two people that love someone would school them before a mental health intake. So when I hear Melanie Gibb on her interview, I can't remember what interview it was. It was in 3 parts that East Idaho News put it on. But in one of her interviews, she talks about how Lori came out of that meeting at Community Bridges and she was ecstatic that she had passed the interview with flying colors. And I'm going to say she didn't pass an evaluation with flying colors. She had passed there's a plane going over, so I'm kind of muffled. I feel like I can't talk, but I guess I can. So, long story short, she didn't pass a mental health evaluation. That would have taken 72 hours. So let's say it really happened. What Charles didn't say, give her an intake. Take her in for an hour and a half and ask her questions and have her answer. He didn't ask for that in that paperwork. In those committal papers that he had someone draft, it wasn't drafted as, please interview this person for an hour and a half and make a decision. He had expressly asked for a 72-hour evaluation. And what that would have meant was she would have gotten into, and I don't know what facilities they have, but they all work pretty much the same. So they go into a mental health facility for longer term patients, typically. And in that facility, she'll get interviewed and monitored and interviewed and monitored. So throughout her 72 hours, she will be looked at and talked to and looked at and talked to over and over and over. Everything she does during that 72 hours will be monitored, as well as even her visitors will be monitored. They'll actually let her have visitors. Sometimes, not all states, but some states do. And in that time, if she has a visitor, they will put the visitor in a private room, but it is usually at least the audio is tape recorded, not usual visual audio recording, but just an audio recording in that room. So even company, and they tell you, some states do, some don't. But if you're a visitor to that patient, then they usually tell you. But I'm going to share that a good facility won't let anyone in. And the reason being is they really want to strip you down and just see who you are without the undue influence of someone else coming in and interrupting that 72 hours. But the issue is she never got that. She did not get a mental health evaluation. Melanie Gibb does not speak of, okay, she left the intake evaluation and went to the 72-hour evaluation that Charles had asked for. So that's where I'm at the bottom of what I'm trying to talk about is who failed Charles Vallow. Because I've seen this time in and time again that the system fails someone, and they usually end up dead, or in this case, the petitioner, the person closest to could see the changes in Lori, ended up dead. And when you're around someone that has delusional thinking, those delusions are true to that person. And if I was a betting person, I would wager that Lori Vallow had so many delusions at that time that Charles was extremely frightened because he couldn't discern real from not real, where could he make that line where Lori won't do that or Lori will do that? Lori doesn't really think that, or Lori does think that. There's no place for Charles Vallow to be in that situation. That was the institution's place to evaluate her during that intake evaluation and then sending her into the 72-hour. And that's when it's called a psych eval. That's when it's called that she was evaluated for psychological problems. And that's where they might have discovered that she had delusions that were or might be risking her life or someone else's. And I want to share one thing is, I can have a delusion that I'm the devil and that me, the devil, holds a knife. But as long as I don't tell the practitioner that I'm going to use that knife tomorrow to kill Jed, whoever Jed is, then I'm all set. It is only when you have a plan that the petitioners can keep you. So in that 72-hour evaluation period for Lori Vallow, if it had occurred, which it didn't, they would have been able to discover, A, what her delusional patterns were, 2, if she had plans, or if she was building those plans. And so now, in a long-winded way of saying, I brought you down to where the next step is. After the 72 hours, in most states, it's law that you go before a judge. And they're a judge that's familiar with mental health cases. They're not just the typical judge that doesn't understand mental health issues. They are very well versed on when they should keep someone and when they can let someone go by the laws. She would have, after that 72 hours, she would have been asked to go before a judge. They would have given her a representative, all the mental health clinicians that had worked with her in that 72-hour period, including the psychiatrist, because all of her paperwork gets funneled to the psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist looks at all what she does in the day, what her thought processes are, her plans, her inactive plans. All this stuff would be in front of him, and then he'd make the decision himself, and he would testify to the judge. He'd sit up and, swear himself, get sworn in, and he would tell the judge what he thought. And then Charles Vallow would be there, because whoever the petitioner is gets to go into that courtroom. It's very private. It's usually, like I said, just the clinicians, the petitioner, and the psychiatrist. And Charles would get up and say, okay, I understand that they found this, this, and this, but I want to add these very important features to what her thinking and her behavior has been like. So they would have been able to discern. The judge would be able to discern with all of this information exactly what was going on in her immediate thinking process. And that's when the judge would determine if Lori Vallow should stay for therapeutic action. And that would be, obviously, the first thing they'd want to do to someone who's highly delusional is they'd put her on antipsychotics. She would probably refuse to take them, because most people do that are delusional, but that's usually the first step, is to put her on an antipsychotic to get rid of delusional thinking. And then I can hear you all saying, even though I can't see any comments, if there are any, I can hear you saying, but it wasn't delusion, it was religion. I'm not going to split hairs about that, because the religion was the poison that fed her delusional capabilities, in my opinion. Without the religion, she might not have become so delusional. So it was the catalyst, but the end result is she's still delusional. So I'm not going to split hairs about what came first, her delusions or her religion or her delusions. It doesn't really matter. She's delusional, and she has a propensity to harm because she keeps demonstrating to Charles that she has a propensity to harm by saying she's going to harm him, and he's not taking it as a joke. So with that said, I want to leave us, because I know I've rattled on too long here, is I really believe we failed Charles Vallow. And I'm going to get a little biased here. If Lori had gone in with all the same complaints, that Charles had the same features in his psychological makeup at the time, would Charles have gotten the 72-hour hold for evaluation? This is where the system fails a lot. For some reason, we still believe women can't harm. Women can't harm their children. Women can't harm men. Women are as benign, maybe, as Jesus Christ. We really put women in a different sect. And I am going to tell you that I don't care about statistics, because as any mathematician will tell you, statistics lie, because it's whoever's putting those statistics into the program that gets what they want out. But my statistics from living, from just pure living a long life, is that women need to be held accountable. And how do we do that? We start encouraging the systems that fail the men to hold the women culpable of what they do. There's no angel woman, just like there's no angel man. So I don't understand why we're still running around in 2020 with the idea that women are benign, because they're not. And everyone has Lori Vallow's story is proven this to us. You know? So with that said, I'm going to close for now. I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe if you would. And I'm going to tell you, if you missed any part, to go back to the beginning, because I forget to remind people during it to go back and listen if things aren't making sense. But anyways, I want to share how we, and I'm saying we because we're the ones that legislate the laws, and we're the ones that made the 72-hour hold. You know, we can't make rules and policies without approval from our peers, and that's through the legislation processes and the regulatory processes. And so somehow we have crafted rules and laws that do not save people, and that's what we need to work on. I'm going to leave you with, this is a sad day. Charles Vallow has been dead, murdered in cold blood, ambushed for 330 days today. He got murdered on July 11th, 2019. Lori Vallow has only been in jail since February 20th of 2020. That's 106 days. We need to work to change perceptions and laws so that another Charles Vallow, JJ Vallow, and Tylee Ryan does not end up in the positions. Those three, Charles, JJ, and Tylee, do not have their freedom. Neither does Lori, but we're all set with that. Thank you very much.